The sky above the mountains loomed heavy with storm clouds as 6 women arrived at the isolated monastery, a massive stone structure carved into the cliffs, where silence pressed against their skin like an unspoken warning. They had been invited under different pretenses, some seeking spiritual enlightenment, others promised a cure for their past traumas, and a few simply looking for a way to escape their troubled lives. But none knew the true nature of this place, nor what was waiting for them behind its ancient, iron-bolted doors. The air smelled of damp stone, burnt incense, and something metallic, something hidden beneath the floorboards. As they stepped inside, their reflections disappeared from the glassy windows, the walls seemed to breathe, and the shadows elongated in unnatural ways, curling like whispers against the flickering candlelight. A woman dressed in black robes, her face partially obscured by a hood, stood in the dim corridor, her gaze empty, yet it saw everything. "The ritual cleanses," she intoned, her voice a hollow echo in the cavernous halls, and before anyone could ask what she meant, the heavy wooden doors slammed shut behind them, locking them inside. There was no going back. The first night was uneventful, except for the whispers, soft, almost melodic, drifting through the corridors like forgotten prayers. The second night, the rules were spoken aloud. To ascend, one must be reborn. To be reborn, one must be purified. To be purified, one must be sheared. The words made no sense until the first woman was taken. It was Mara, the most skeptical of them all, a journalist investigating the disappearance of past visitors. She was dragged, kicking, screaming, pleading, into a chamber dimly lit by a single candle. The rest were forced to watch as 2 figures, pale and expressionless, held her down while the hooded woman lifted a pair of gleaming silver clippers. Mara's struggle was useless as the blades touched her scalp, and the soft hum of the razor filled the chamber like a chant, the metallic vibration sinking into their bones. Strands of her thick, auburn hair fell in slow, mesmerizing spirals, catching the candlelight like ribbons of fire before landing on the cold stone floor. Mara's protests became sobs, then whispers, then silence as more and more of her identity was stripped away. But it was after the last lock fell that the horror began. Her face twisted into something unrecognizable, not just from grief, but as if something was moving beneath her skin, reshaping her. Her eyes widened, unfocused, her breath quickened, and she gasped, her hands trembling as they traced the smooth surface of her newly exposed scalp. Then, with a single, shuddering exhale, she whispered, "It was inside me, all along." Before anyone could question her, she collapsed, body convulsing violently on the stone floor as a dark, viscous liquid oozed from her pores, seeping from the very spots where her hair had once been. The others screamed, tried to run, but the cloaked figures stood at the exits, unmoving, their faces eerily serene. That night, Mara did not speak. She sat, motionless, in the corner of the chamber, her bald head gleaming under the candlelight, her eyes empty, glassy, as though something had been taken from her, or worse, something had been left behind. But it did not end with her. One by one, the others were taken. The next was Liza, who resisted until the very end, her wails echoing through the stone corridors as she was stripped of her raven locks. The sound of the razor melding into something deeper, something guttural, like a growl emanating from within the walls themselves. When her last strand fell, she let out a scream so raw, so inhuman, it sent chills down the spines of those waiting their turn. And then she, too, fell silent. Each night, another woman lost her hair, not just their hair, but their sanity, their identity, their past. As the ritual progressed, the survivors noticed a change in the ones who had already been shorn. Their movements became slow, deliberate, their eyes distant, their expressions too serene to be natural. "They're no longer themselves," whispered Adira, the last one with her hair intact, clutching her head as though protecting the final vestiges of her soul. But the walls whispered back, "Neither are you." That was when she saw them. The strands of hair moving on the stone floor, writhing like severed nerves, inching toward her as if they were alive. Her hair, their hair, all of it was feeding something. The truth came too late. Hair was not just a part of them, it was a seal, a protection against the entity buried deep within their skulls, an entity that had lain dormant for centuries, waiting to be released. And as Adira fought against the hands pinning her down, felt the cold steel against her scalp, and heard the mechanical click of the clippers spring to life, she realized, it was never about cleansing. It was about awakening. The last thing she saw before the razor met her skin was Mara, staring at her with an unnatural grin, her hand touching the smooth curve of her bare head, her voice soft, reverent, as she whispered, "We are free."